Morning everyone, welcome to our first SAUG webinar for 2024. Thanks to all our members who've joined in such big numbers. Great to see so many people on this call. I hope everyone is well. Firstly, thanks to IQX Business Solutions for their support of SAUG and for making this webinar possible. Today we're looking at a very popular topic, asset accounting with Fiori apps. Two very popular areas we're finding. Just before we start, a few details. This session is being recorded. The recording and a copy of the presentation will be made available on the SAUG website shortly, and we'll notify everyone when it's ready. Everyone is on mute, but you can ask questions at any time using the question function on the right of your screen, and we'll go through questions at the end. Any that we don't get through, we'll send to the presenters and distribute the answers. There'll also be contact details on the slide, so if you'd like to ask any questions in the future, you can definitely email or contact the presenters directly. And also, if there's any feedback from today's topic, or particularly if you'd like to hear about particular areas, please let us know also in the question function as well. Now, so we don't hold things up, I'd like to introduce our presenter. It's Grant Slinger, who's the Chief Operations Officer at IQX Business Solutions. Thanks, Grant.
Yes, hi everybody. Welcome. I'm very excited to be here today to talk to you about this topic. Really talking about Fiori and how Fiori can help with your asset accounting. And really thank you for your time attending the session. I hope to make it valuable for you. So just a quick personal introduction. I'm a chartered accountant, worked in the business and then moved into SAP over 20 years ago. Always been and really focused on that consulting side, and had a really personal passion for good business process. I really like to see that executed, and particularly to seeing end users really able to use a solution without frustration and get the kind of results they need. Had various roles, so I think I'm well experienced. I've been, on the consulting side. I've even been, the SAP Systems Manager, and I think recently what's been really great is this Fiori technology for me personally, and that it can really help in business process and for those end users, and that's what we'll focus on today. So the agenda, let me just see if I can get this thing moving. The agenda is a quick introduction just about IQX, who we are and what we do. We won't spend too long on that. Focus a little bit on thinking about some of the challenges with asset accounting, a little bit of focus on capitalization disposals to highlight some of those challenges, and then really spend most of our time on a demo, which I think is going to be useful. It'll give us some insights into Fiori capability generally, and how it can be used to really help some of these processes. Talk about where the business value is with this approach, and then I hope to leave some time for questions. So I've asked Michael to jump in if I'm carrying on, so we can make sure we get to those. So let's jump right in. A little bit about IQX. So we've been around for quite a long time, a certified partner. We've always focused on SAP-centric process solutions. So on that, on those users building business processes, lots of customers, as you can see there, and we're finding more and more that customers. What we've really done is narrowed our focus. Instead of doing everything for everybody, we really are trying to focus on the CapEx solution, right? And that's an end-to-end business process, which I'll talk about and just explain that a little bit to you. So it's really focusing on this integrated CapEx solution for SAP. And how do we do that as a business? We use a number of technologies. You'll see at the top, we're talking about one list, which is really there for executive and manager approvals. It's bringing all the approval and task decisions into one place and mobilizing them particularly. So giving people lists and counts of how many tasks they've got open is very useful when you come to accelerating and controlling business processes. On the left here, we've got technology focused around a software product called StratEx, which is really sitting at the very front of this idea to asset process. Sitting at the very front, thinking about long-term planning, capital budgeting, and the management of your portfolio of budgeted and in-progress projects, so that you can stay in control of your capital budget and spend and success of those projects. We then move into SAP Fiori over here, and this is really what I work with mostly, is around the SAP side. And this is really all about the capital expenditure requests, project creation, allowing projects to navigate procurement and financial policy with project procurement, onboarding suppliers, raising the requisitions and that against the projects, and then thinking of forecasting, and lastly coming to this project completion and asset management. And really this is what today's session is going to be focused on. But if you're interested in any of those other solutions, obviously that's available to talk to us about that. And I'm really going to focus in on these sessions and try and show you, the problems and value around them. So what we end up delivering when we talk about Fiori is really a suite of Fiori apps to control the end-to-end business process. So it's not just one application. Although very useful and very successful, it's much better when you're actually controlling the full application and giving the tooling to the business to manage the process, have insight in the process, etc. So that's what we do. But today the focus is on that back-end part, the asset accounting piece. And I would just like everyone to just take a pause here and have a think about what are some of their challenges with asset accounting. So have a think about that. It may be nice if there's some questions around that, or if we miss some key challenges that you really think are important. I'd love to hear what those are, and I'm sure everyone on this webinar would like to know. So please share those with us in the questions. That'll be fantastic. We're all here to learn and share knowledge and information. This is some of the ones that I've seen with our customers, working with them in the asset accounting. So we've got to acknowledge that data collection from projects, building capital assets and acquiring capital assets, to getting that into asset registers is complex and it's difficult. There's lots of information. You need asset-based information. What is the asset? What is it comprised of? Is it one single asset, or is it actually, does it need to be split into two? Are there serial numbers, models? Who's responsible? Where does this depreciation going to go? What is the useful life? What is the depreciation asset classes of this? So there's a lot of complex information, and it is a challenge to get all that data together and to be enable the capitalization of those assets. When you think of another challenge, is just timing and doing this at the right time and getting assets capitalized when they should be. There's often a lag between the actual commissioning of an asset and the capitalization of that asset. And similarly, when it comes to disposals and transfers, there's also can be differences between the actual event in the business and the time it's recorded in the accounting systems. So that's a challenge that would be nice to address. The management of the actual work is an interesting one as well. There's lots of parties involved. There's project managers, there's engineers, there's finance and asset accountants, there's procurement. So closing out a project and capitalizing assets, really there is a lot of flow of work. And when you think of that, that often ends up in other processes or other little subsystems, say like a SharePoint, a PowerPoint app or something like that. It ends up in spreadsheets often, and it also ends up in email, and then it becomes slightly disaggregated. So I think there's a real challenge around the process. And that ends up also meaning there's a lot of data that's rekeyed, and it's time consuming. So you get that part of the process by being some of the stuff in outside is a lot of manual relaying between the different processes. Visibility is another key challenge. It's very hard for asset accounting team to understand what the status is of the project, when they should take action. Is this project capitalized? Should it be capitalized now? Should we be creating the assets? It's tricky for them. It's also a process to work with procurement and others to close projects. And it's difficult to know when assets have been transferred and disposal. So if you have no way of notifying people. And that comes to really the point of control. So what we would want to see in this asset accounting process is, auditability, I think, is the key thing. There's a lot of rules around assets. Financial accounting auditors will focus on this definitely when they come in. There's SOX compliance issues. Often audit points are raised about what's capitalized, whether it's allowed or not, according to the financial statements and policies and GAAP and all that. So there's issues there. And really what you're trying to get out of this is also having control over your asset register, making sure you got your assets are there, your register's accurate and it's complete. So these are the challenges that I've experienced with my customers. As I mentioned, if you've got others, I'd love to hear those. What I'm going to show next is let's look at how solutions and talk through and show how a solution can address and how Fiori can help you address some of these solutions. So this is going to get more exciting, but you just have to wait a little bit longer, because let's just make sure we're all on the same page from the project completion and capitalization process. So looking at this process, without going into all the bits and pieces here, you do have to select a project, and have views of your actuals and your costs basically. So you need to understand where those projects are at, and are they getting ready? Are they coming to an end? To start doing that process, you will change statuses on the project. So and here we're assuming these are projects. So you'll have to change statuses on your WBSs. You want to stop expenditure, you want to start closing out purchase orders. And that's really in project world. Project managers, engineers, people executing that world. Across in finance and fixed asset, we've got to actually create fixed asset shells with all the information. And then to enable the whole process to work, we've got to update settlement rules and stuff. So this is all technical SAP stuff, but that is going to mean we can actually get the costs from the project and the asset under construction through to the final asset. And lastly, we also want to think about releasing any unused budget, closing out any forecasts we've got. So it's a complex business process, cross-function, cross-module in SAP. So let me hop out of here and let's go look at a demonstration of some of this functionality in Fiori. Let me see if I can get out of here. There we go. Okay. So I'm now in a Fiori Launchpad. I know a lot of us are on S4 HANA. Some of us are on ECC. Some of us may not have worked with Fiori apps. So these are just applications running in the browser that have services that are using data from the backend system, and we'll see that when we use it. And they're SAP's browser-based technology, and it certainly, as I mentioned earlier, made a big difference. We were able to really get a great impact, to end users with this functionality, and really simplify where necessary, but also expand the business models where required as well. So what I'm focusing on today is this process here, capital completion. So I'm a project manager, I'm an asset accountant, and I come into the same report. So we're sharing the data. What's great about these is we've got access to all your SAP information, so I can select my company code. Hopefully, and normally this would be defaulted. You would have either be able to default things like that, so you don't have to pick. And then I can go and get a list of projects. And I'll run that. What's great about Fiori here is you can get all the things you get before. I can swap this out to my own layout variant. So now I get exactly the data I want for myself here. I can share that with others. And I get all the functionality. We're not going to spend lots of time. This is standard stuff, about all the columns. You can sort them. You can provide special filters up front. So you got some nice functionality there. When we come into this report, this is where we start to communicate. We can all see the same information regardless of function. And if you start looking across these projects, you'll see here we've got some nice system statuses. So here's a system status called created, and you can see there's no commitments or any activity on this project because this project hasn't been released yet. So we're immediately getting information as to how far these particular projects have progressed. We can see others down here that are in a technically completed status, which is where the status you would do to start closing out your projects. You can see here we've got this DEPS. Now we can make these obviously text explaining them better as well. But a lot of people will understand some of these, but this means you can run depreciation simulation, for example, on these projects. So if you've got a big asset base and you also want to start looking at what some of these projects will be bringing online for you, understand that there's depreciation simulation available against this project. We get information about the status of the project, the actuals, commitments, assigned and available. So we've got a budget for this project of 120. The actuals and commitments equals the assigned, and therefore we still haven't used 51, allocated $51,000 to any particular spend. What else is useful in this project is that this is key information we're now using to start understanding where these projects are at, percentage complete, and days to plan capitalization. So I can come in here and I can sort that, and that'll give me a better idea of which projects should be capitalized. And if we look down the bottom here, I've got one that's due to be capitalized the 28th of the 2nd, 1 day's time, and it's like 88%, 0.5 complete. So the project manager is coming in here and saying, yep, this project is actually complete. We built this pump station. It's really in the last stage of, it's going to be commissioned in time. Everything's good. So I would like to initiate the next step in the process. And this is where we can launch from one application a second application. That's a nice thing with Fiori. You can cross over the applications and pass some of that information into the application, and then it'll pull all the data back, just like it's done here. So if we look at this now, we can see that I've got a lot of information about this project. I've actually launched a project completion request, which will allow me to interact with, share information, and also interact with other participants in a business process. So if we look at this, I can see that I've got actuals of 100,000 on my CapEx line. I had a budget for OpEx, but I didn't actually spend any of that. But if there's OpEx cost here, that has its own settlement process, which would say settle out to the cost center, let's say. As the closing out project process, project manager, I can start doing things like saying I want to technically complete this information. What else I can do is I can also start shaping up my assets. So this particular asset, let's say it was pump station, which consisted of pump station building. If I can spell building right, that'll help. Building, and let's say it also had a second asset, which consists of just the pump. And the reason we're doing this is it may be the case that when you're capitalizing, it's not that simple. It's not just one asset, as we know. You may want to create two assets. Just for ease of demonstration, we're not going into main assets, sub assets today, but that's perfectly normal. But here I would say one's a different asset class. It's machinery, plant equipment, where this is an actual building. What is the capitalization date? Oh, we're actually doing it today. And that is all I need to complete on that one. What you've now got available here in the bottom part is a workflow. Now, this workflow is very simple just because it's a demonstration. We've simply got a one-step approval process. But in real terms, this is your chance to collaborate. You may send this information as the project manager in managing a plant to maybe the plant accountant and the plant general manager. Say, yeah, I'm happy that we're closing out that project. I'm done, tick. Then off it goes to the financial team and the asset accounting team, who will then get into some of this detail over what exactly is the split of this capitalization. So now we've got a workflow, and what I can then do is simply submit that. And what did I do wrong there? I didn't provide a split between the assets. So we know there's different ways of doing that, and you can have configuration to change this to either be rule or dollar based. So this one, I mean percentage or value based. So this one needs a rule here. So what was good about that is you can see you mandating some data quality in this Fiori application by enforcing that this must balance to 100 if we're splitting the assets out. So that happens all over the solution. So we're happy with that. I can then submit, I can enter a comment, all good, and I can continue. And that's now taking me back to where I was. But what happens from an business process perspective is if I go into my list here of my forms, I can see that there is a project completion request created by myself, and I can track that through its status of where it's going. But in this instance, what I'm looking to do is to be the approver. So I can come in here and I've got it in my approval queue. And this would also be where I mentioned earlier, one list itself could also mobilize this decision. So at least you know it's there, and it can either launch you back into this, or you can take a decision there. But let's come into here, and I've now got a process where I can see the data. The exact rules about the approver and what they can and can't change is something that you can configure. You should be able to in your solution. So when you're building these type of solutions, regardless of technology approach, you need to think about what happens if I want to be able to change the cost center as the second person in the business process. And that's how you manage some of that stuff. But here, it's basically you can only have two decisions, approve or reject. So let's approve that, and off that goes. So that's running off there, and we'll probably come back to this and look at it. But what I'm going to do now is say, step back, that's me as an individual approver or requester in the process, but also what happens if I'm want to understand how the process is going overall. Well, you can come into these monitoring app, and this is pulling up all the processes that are running, right? And depending on how fast that process has gone, you can see all the completed ones or not. So it looks like that pump station 1 is actually being completed. So while I was coming here, if we come back into it, so you can navigate into it from there or from your personal request lists. This is overall one or the personal one. You can come back and then you can see the status here. Now what's the key, what's happened here is you can see we've created 2 assets and you've got the numbers. So that's been successful. It's also completed successfully. If there are any problems, we pop up a panel here which will show you all the logs of the problems, and there's an administration feature where the administrator, you should have these in solutions. You've got to think about where things go wrong. How do you pick them up? How do you reprocess? How do you complete a business process, right, in your system? So we've got some assets there. If we come to, let's go and have a look. I think it's worth just looking in SAP. I probably should have done some log on of this, but we'll just quickly log on here. And we'll jump into SAP. Let's have a look what that looks like in SAP itself. Let me just make sure I get in. So if we typically, and it's probably worth showing, the business process that normally happens next is settlement. So if we looked at settlement, and we went to this CJ88 here, we should be able to settle that particular project. And so if we came back to our browser, we could say this project is this guy, and so that's the one I need to settle. So let's put that in there. Let's period 2 to period 2, and let's get to a 2024, right? And we could run it in a test quickly just to make sure it's working. This is standard SAP, so that looks great. So we can run that. So what we're not doing in this business process is we're not interfering with the standard month-end processes that will take care of everything. We are leaving those alone. So that process should just run. And I got an error message. Okay, so this is the problem with test data. Sometimes you have to make sure. Let me just put this to the end of the month. Put an asset value date. This is technical stuff. SAP doesn't like the dates I'm using because I've created recent data here, and we can run that again, and hopefully that helps it understand that it can post the data, and then we can look at that information. And the key thing to see here is we've created the fixed assets and we've put the value against each of those assets. And if you went into your Asset Explorer, you'll be able to see that you've got 2 fixed assets that have been successfully capitalized in an end-to-end business process. The business can use that application to further go through the business process. So going back to, let's go back to Fiori, they can come back into this application again and then set this to close here as well and go through the process of closing the project. Those are some of the things we can do here. So that was really looking at project completion. Just around that quickly, other thing to notice is we showed you that important things in Fiori that you need, I think, is things like the ability to see what's yours, and you can see here submitted by me. I've put in a whole lot. I've done some journals. Did some budget requests, some capital approval requests. What else have I done recently? Maybe I did some purchase requisitions, over here. So you can have lots of different processes that you're managing, and you can see exactly where they're up to. You can see what you've got to approve. You can see what's actioned by you. And if you're an administrator of the process, you can also get your list here. And you can get your list, as I mentioned, the other important things from overall process manager, you can manage the list. And the last point is that the configuration for the application can sit in an administration app. And I won't go too much into detail with this, but it sits in an administration app here, and you can manage who the approvals are, you can redetermine approvals, set up defaults, etc., etc. So this takes the process management away. You don't want it sitting with IT. You don't want them to do everything for you. In your Fiori layer, you want some process management in the hands of the business as well. Okay, what I had next was to talk the other side of the coin here, is to also look at disposals. And I'm going to just come and have a look at that. So we've got here some asset apps around disposal. You may notice I've just swapped systems. And if you don't see a big difference, really, do you? But on the back end, you can see this is an S4 system. The other one was an ECC system. So Fiori goes across both these, whether you've got ECC, you've got S4, it doesn't matter. You can get some great Fiori apps to help you with, your business process execution and some of the challenges you may have. So let's take a look at assets as another quick demo. Typically, this range of applications is really not thinking of the power asset users in the asset team. It's really thinking about what happens in the business, disposing of assets, transferring assets, and doing simple changes of the assets, right? Let me just re-sign in here. I think I've lost my sign in. Let me do that. There we go. Let me start again. So I've just logged back in. So it's thinking of those three processes, and it's thinking of let's get this information recorded and managed, properly when you're disposing of an asset. Some of the problems and challenges with asset disposal can be a big surprise if the business disposes of a large value asset right near the end of a financial year and you weren't expecting that, and suddenly you've got a big impact in your P&L. There's also challenges around custodianship of assets, that you want to make sure these things are there. One, so verifying them and making sure they're there, and two, making sure that when you move them around, you're actually recording them and have got an understanding of the decisions made in that process. So that's what we're trying to achieve here, and we're trying to bring that into SAP and not have it done on some other basis, as we mentioned earlier. So let's have a look at asset disposal app. If we jump in here, I just again can select my company code, and it's a different one this time. Maybe I want to do something with revenue like that. And one of the things that we know people love, and it's useful, and all the teams like Excel, right? It's very useful. So I could simply be able to come into something like this and drag, say, a list of my assets I want to dispose of. I pick them up from somewhere, I drop them into a grid, and here I've got my assets, the details, the acquisition, accumulated net book value, and this was with revenue, so I got some money when I disposed of these things. But I had a net P&L impact here of 69K across those two assets with the net book value of that. So the reason we need this type of information is this may influence your workflow approval process to dispose of these assets. We also know that some industries have quite detailed processes around disposing of assets. If it is something you don't want out, like say a truck, you don't want it to be used by someone else buying it and then become a competitor, you may want that decommissioned with a more detailed process, and Fiori can help you with all of those type of things, extensions of the baseline functionality. So I've got that data, but maybe there's other ways I want to find information. So I could be coming in here and saying, okay, let me put in my plant, select, let me search for data. And now I've got a whole lot of information. What is quite nice is you can select data, and again, you can export that information. And so if you export data, you can then work out what it is, what you've got, and also what you want to potentially dispose of. So if I came and opened up something like that, you've got useful data in Excel. If it opens, come on. I should have had my Excel open there. So you got useful information, all your asset information here, right? And that's just what we decided to download here. If you link to equipment, notice we're thinking about that as well. There's obviously downstream implications in terms of your asset maintenance and equipment records. So that was just a quick show. So just understand that all these applications, your Fiori applications, should be recognizing Excel and should have nice Excel features in them. If I said, okay, let's go back to my scenario to complete this, let me just see if this, I can just drop this back in again. That may give me less data to work with. So there we have it. I've got that request back. I'm back to my same totals. I've got a workflow here which says I'm going to require some approval. We know that's just for demo. You're going to have a more probably complex approval. Matrix setup based on value, organizational units, plants, the like, that will then derive which steps are required and which and exactly what approvals you need. And the point is, on the transfer, you often have the sending and receiving parties approving. So you can have that communication between the two parties happening, one sending the data, the other reviewing and accepting it. If they don't like it, they can send it back, and the person initiating the asset transfer, can adjust it, and you can do that until you've got the right result. And that's where we talk about collaboration in the process. So let's submit this, continue, and off that goes, right? If you go to my forms again, I will see that I have this request here. Now, it's much the same. I'm not going to go through this. This is going to go through dispose of the assets. You can decide how you want to treat the receiving of revenue, whether you want a process to record, actually automate that in SAP, or is that separate. That's some variations that we get with some of this stuff. So let me stop there and let me move on, and let's look back to our presentation. Some more slides. Let's see if I can get the slideshow running. I'm sorry, it always seems to want to present on the other one. So we did demo the asset disposals there. And this is really just talking about what you saw in that demo. So SAP with their standard apps is very good at creating apps to do a single transaction, like asset disposal, but it presumes you've got all the information to hand at that point in time, and you just enter the data and push save, and that's how it works. So it's not thinking about it, collecting and bringing the information to you. A good Fiori process, if you want to think about process management, needs really three main things. It needs a staging layer. So you saw that I had those requests for project completion and capitalization request, and I had an asset disposal request. That gets persisted as a request object in a staging layer in your SAP system. The other key component is the workflow to enable collaboration and more than collaboration, also enforcing delegation of authorities, and recording the requisite approvals according to your policies around the business process you're executing. And orchestration is something you did see actually in the project completion, because we processed multiple SAP updates to make that successful. We actually processed, created fixed assets, and we changed data on the project. So we had a process orchestration which did multiple updates out of a single business context. Now, how you do this, I think, is less important. There is, SAP's business technology platform is now allowing you to build some of this Fiori style application and bring workflow into it. We do it at IQX using our Fiori app builder tool, which is very the data staging layer and workflow are very aligned to make that workflow implementation a lot simpler, easy to do. So that's what we did. So let's think of some of the value drivers of Fiori and around these asset accountants, asset accounting, I should say. So we spoke earlier, around timeliness. So it is about getting things expedited and getting those events initiated and recorded at the time they actually occur. And you've got to make that easy for the business to do. And also by having visibility of your approvals or your tasks, your inbox, the next action can get done faster. This helps productivity, streamlining and efficient process, and automated transactions. You're not keying stuff, dual keying stuff or keying stuff out of one spreadsheet or email into the system. It's automated. You're getting your outcomes improved because you're getting improved data quality. You're getting that collaboration happening, and by having these processes streamlined, you're saving time and cost. And a very important one is compliance. The whole process mitigates risk across your business processes. It enables traceability and accountability because you've got full audit trails of every decision made. All the data that was made is kept there at the time it was made. You can make sure those Fiori applications enforce your business policy that may not be enforceable in the pure SAP transaction. And there's a lot of that happening in the Fiori layer, where you're adding business rules and adding business data, as well as simplifying the SAP transaction. And what you need for people to really love these solutions, adopt them and use them, is that delightful user experience. Everything's in one place. In Fiori, it's all in SAP, which means you've got a good start in terms of automation, because you're only dealing with one thing. You need those workflows to manage the process, both Fiori and, as I mentioned earlier, the decision making in one list, mobilized transactions, which helps you. And you've got one security model here with everyone in SAP. You're not dealing with some data sitting outside in, maybe, as I said before, something like a Power Up in SharePoint or another solutions form. Lastly, we can help in this area. That's the reason I'm here today, is to explain that we are really focused particularly in the whole end-to-end idea to asset business process. It's what we do. We've got very good knowledge on these processes, lots of experience dealing with these at different business verticals. We've got a great team, a very experienced onshore team that delivers these. What we do is we typically start with these apps you've seen today, baseline apps that we can deploy. It's a great way of getting buy-in when people can touch and see things. The project is much more around gap analysis and how does that need to change to really work for you and your business, which really means you get the results sooner for better value. We use the App Builder tooling as the configurator, which means that you actually you start off with effectively a copy of a Fiori app. It's your app, it's in your SAP system, it's in your namespace, but it's tailored to your exact requirements. And that's what really provides that usability at the end of the day. It's your workflow that gets encompassed into those applications. And really, if you use Fiori in that way, we've seen great results. Customers, and particularly the end users, love it. So I'm going to pause there and open up for any questions.
Great, thanks Grant. Really good presentation, really interesting information there. If anyone has any questions, as we mentioned before, just use the question function on the right of your screen, and we'll try to get through as many as we can. Grant, we do have a number of questions. Some are closer to maybe a comment, but I'll read them out so you can sort of you can comment on those as well, and then see what we can get through. So the first one, Grant, is it's almost like a comment. It's like, I assume that everything tagged with IQX is a custom Fiori application.
Yes, that's correct. So what we're doing is we're delivering, yes, custom Fiori applications. Exactly right. That's really how you get the highest user experience and tailoring to your business process. But I guess the point today is customers don't want to start with nothing. Building custom Fiori applications, they're expensive, they take a long time. You would only really do that for something unique and highly valuable for you, I would suggest. So what we do is we've got the baseline solution that's already built. So then the focus of the project is not that at all. The focus of the project is, what needs to be added, to that to make it work for you and your business.
Great. This one, Grant, is more of a comment, but I'll put it out there and see if you can, you want to sort of weigh in on it. One of our members has said that asset reporting is a challenge with the new Asset Fiori applications, particularly the asset history sheet. And he's saying that he had issues from an auditability perspective when using the new Fiori app. I mean, did you have any comments on that?
I think some of the Fiori stuff is quite difficult. You have to cater for everybody. It's a solution that's built. The problem with the Fiori app is it's not a tailored slice that's just suits your business. It's a Fiori application that's got to cater for everybody. So there can be some challenges like that. I think a lot of if you're starting to manage your capital process, so you've got, what assets are coming in, and you're starting to manage your disposals, you've got auditability over that. You've got control over those processes. That's what we're trying to bring in here as well, is that element of control. But in terms of knowing the exact problems with the asset history sheet, yeah, I'd love to get some more time on that and really understand that better.
Yeah, great. This one, Grant, is more of actually a bit of feedback, but I'll put it out there because a person asked, will this session be addressing standard S/4HANA capabilities for asset accounting? And my thought is, well, that's probably not really the scope of this presentation, but it is an area that I think it's on the list for the asset SIG to cover. So we can probably have a look at that. I do have a question here. Where or how is the process flow or audit log designed?
So there's a tooling that these applications are running on called App Builder for SAP Fiori, or IQX App Builder, and it's designed inside that tooling. So there's a whole process flow where you can draw it out like you draw workflows, and you configure it within the tooling. So it's a configuration within the tooling. So it's like a workflow engine. That's really the core of what we're providing with our approach to building these process-centric apps. You could think, if you were thinking about what would SAP standard solution for that, it would probably be something like business process automation, sitting up on the BTP for the workflow management. Yeah.
So the next two questions, and I'll put them together because they're sort of related, Grant, around BTP as well. So the first one is Ben's asking, other apps that you showed, were they developed in BTP with a clean core approach? And I suppose the second part is, well, do we need to subscribe to SAP BTP Fiori component if we use this IQX solution?
Yeah, that's both good questions. So the applications can run on BTP. The data and service logic is sitting in the backend system, be it S4 or ECC. So the data does sit in there. It is, we're saying, can you run it without BTP? Yes, you can, because you can run any Fiori app, just like you get your S4HANA. There's S4HANA customers we're working with who don't have BTP yet, but they're running suites of these Fiori apps, right, on their S4 system. In terms of clean core, I think clean core is a journey. It is, the tooling at the moment is still clean. We've been to several upgrades where our tooling's in place with S4 system. I had no issues, but it's not at this point 100% residing on the BTP platform. So the applications can be deployed and run on the BTP, but there still is some service logic sitting on the back end of SAP, and that's kind of still what you're getting a lot, where you don't have all the APIs and everything else managed, provided by SAP. There's that layer that's still custom on the BTP. The tool itself is, certified at the moment, but it's currently going through certification for S4 Cloud Private Edition. Yeah.
Great. You're still doing okay, Grant, because the questions are still coming through. So if you're okay, we'll keep going. Here's an interesting one. How can the app improve annual stock taking obligations?
Annual stock taking obligations in terms of asset verifications. Mm-hmm. Because here, this stock taking to me sounds more like inventory. You're looking at your stock or inventory, and certainly we've got applications in this technology that do that, where you can go out with your Fiori app and do stock counts. But also we got verification of assets, so you can have the application that will saying go and verify these assets, go and take a photo, record them, give me the conditioning, bring that information back. And that just resides in this staging layer until you make decisions on that. And that could be, I need a decision to dispose of this asset. Now that would then link from that to the disposal asset, or I need to write it down so the business could make a decision that it's only got 1 year's useful life left, but we've depreciated it for only 2 years. So I've got to adjust that asset valuation or useful life on the asset. So, so certainly, if you want to look at some of that stuff, yes, we can help you there.
Mm-hmm. Next question is, how do I ensure that asset accounting policies are followed using Fiori? What is your experience with this? And is there a better way to track, for instance, obtained approvals?
Yes, so I'm hoping that we kind of showed that. So there is a better way. You can build into these apps, then extension. They're a new business object. You can think of a request, but they're based off targeted at the SAP obviously data models, because we integrate into that. But you would build your policies into these applications so that you're enforcing them. So SAP transaction doesn't enforce a policy necessarily. You build it into your process. You enforce it in your process and in your workflows, and all that is tracked and auditable. Every single change to that instance is tracked, and every single approval is tracked. So you've got a full audit process. These things are used for capital expenditure requests, all the way to the board level. The same solution. So they've been in a lot of places, inspected lots. So that's how you start enforcing it. You enforce your policy, and you put in a workflow layer that makes SAP become much more of a digital processing platform, and not only a transactional processing platform.
Great. How do the closing activities for asset accounting work in Fiori?
No, I can't answer that one. They work exactly the same as they work in GUI. You know, it's the same. It's underlying functionality is not different. A lot of Fiori can just be a lot of the standard Fiori apps is just the user experience is slightly different, and some of them remain GUI transactions that are just in the Fiori style. So they're not all, if you go and run S4HANA, not everything you execute is a Fiori application. Some are still GUI transactions running in the browser, in the Fiori user experience look and feel.
Right. Grant, I'll try this one. I'll try to, if I can understand this question and say it the best I can. Is the Fiori app only applicable to a specific global job group of SAP users, or will it be made available, made accessible for everyone for some of the generic transactions, if that makes sense?
No, I don't quite understand that question.
We can take.
To use Fiori, the only requirement you have is to be an SAP user, because you need to log on to Fiori with the SAP users. You've got to be an SAP user to use Fiori. Simple as that. Where you use it, whether you're running it, whether you're logging onto a Fiori application in the cloud and only operating on that basis, that's possible. But certainly, to use an application, you have to have it. You need to be SAP user. So regardless of work groups, etc.
Sure. I should make a point here, Grant, because we're coming close to the end of time and we still have questions, and the questions are coming through. So if you do, which is great, it's fantastic. If you do still have questions, there will be contact details. So make sure, I'd really encourage everyone to contact Grant and the team there. Some of these are getting quite specific. What we'll try to do with the ones that are already here, if we don't get through them, which we probably won't through all of them, we'll actually pass them on and we get some sort of response, and we'll put that up with the other details that we send. So we hopefully can answer some of those. I think we might have time for one more. How does parallel depreciation mapping work for book, tax, and parent group? Again, if I've read that right.
Again, I think that's beyond the scope of this. There is functionality around that. You can configure an SAP different depreciation ledgers, both accounting and tax, and you can run on different accounting principles. And there is functionality. I'm not sure I've only really worked with it in S4, but there is functionality for that, which will allow you to do some of that. So, if you need to dig deeper into that, then come and talk to us. We can
Sure. Yeah, we'll have to sort of end it there, Grant. But it's obviously the presentation has triggered off a lot of questions, which is great. So as I was saying, if you have any further questions, please contact us or contact IQX. The details we'll send them out, and we'll get these questions. We'll download these questions, and we'll get some answers and share it with everyone. But just before we go, just a few details for upcoming events. I have to mention next week we've got our big Canberra conference. I know a lot of the people on this call are from the public sector, so the Canberra conference very much focusing on the public sector, but everyone's welcome. Physical event at the Hotel Realm in Canberra. You're more than welcome to register and come along for that. Some great speakers, goes for the whole day. Please remember that. Also, we've got an executive council in Canberra the next day. So if you are in the executive council, or if you want to check if your organisation has someone on the executive council, please also just go to the website and the details are there. And one that should be interesting for a lot of the people again on the call, on the 19th of March, we have our utilities SIG. I know Hydro Tasmania will be giving an update on their big transformation journey, as well as an SAP roadmap and update in utilities. So make sure you register for that. All the details are on the SAEG website. So Thanks again, Grant, for a fantastic presentation. Really good answering of questions, lots of questions there. Thanks to Amber, the IQX Business Solution team, for their support. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us in such big numbers. Hope to see you at the next event, and have a good rest of the day. Thank you.
Yes, thanks all for your time. Much appreciated.